A pay-per-view in the middle of Jim Herd hysteria. I'm John Retlin with a retro review of WCW Great American Bash 1991. And I reviewed the following year's edition just recently, and that was under the Bill Watts administration, which was a lot of fun. Was every match great? No, but the pacing was good, and the matches were really, really good. Sans a couple of them that were just kind of decent. There was like one, maybe two good matches on this show, and my God, Jim Herd had run WCW into the Earth's core. This was around the time where Ric Flair had left the company because he was fed up with Jim Herd, and how Jim Herd had basically wanted to bury the name Ric Flair. For whatever reason, Jim Herd just did not like Ric Flair. And it was actually hilarious because WCW officials weren't going to get rid of Jim Herd, but they were just going to keep offering Ric Flair more money and more money and more money to stay. They weren't going to get rid of the problem, but they wanted to keep Ric Flair because Ted Turner liked Ric Flair. Ric Flair was instrumental in Ted Turner acquiring the company. And they just kept offering him a bunch of money, but he wanted to go to WWE, which was a smart move because then we got the "that's not fair" to Flair thing, and he got to have that great performance in the 92 Rumble and a pretty good run in 1992. The last few months in 1991 for WWE were a little dodgy, a little weird, but he was involved in the Undertaker-Hulk Hogan match at Survivor Series 91. The whole point is they lost Ric Flair. The crowd was chanting, "We want Flair." The crowd should have chanted, "We want refunds," because this show was fucking rotten. At the Baltimore Arena, 89, 90, 91, and it was like a staple for the Great American Bash, and my God, I feel so bad for any of the talents here, like Bobby Eaton with Rapmaster PN News. I used to like that gimmick when I was a kid. I also used to like the Ultimate Warrior when I was a kid. I also apparently liked hitting my head against the wall when I was a kid, because I must have been an idiot for liking those gimmicks. And they took on Stunning Steve Austin and Terrence Taylor, the computerized man of the 1990s, because when I think of technology or technological advances, I think of Terrence Taylor. This was a scaffold match, but a capture the flag scaffold match. You either win by capturing the flag or by knocking your opponent off the scaffold. And yeah, let's just put Bobby Eaton, a master of the scaffold matches, and one of the godfathers of the scaffold match, to be honest. And some of the most famous scaffold matches in house shows and on big events. And my God, this was shit. It was absolute fucking shit. This was not a good way to start it. And you had, two really good talents, Austin and Eaton. One pretty good talent in Terry Taylor, even though Terry Taylor was an incredible worker. By this point, he was starting to have injuries and slowing down. And PN News was also there. So basically, Austin went all the way down and got some powder from Lady Blossom, who I believe he was dating or married to at the time. I'm not quite sure. I know Austin hasn't exactly been the best with some of his significant others, if you know what I mean. But he gets some powder. He throws it at PN News and also Bobby Eaton. But Bobby Eaton's captured the flag. And mind you need to get it back to your corner. But Bobby Eaton just ends up tossing the flag to the ground. And therefore, Eaton and News win. And then they have a bit of a brawl after they all get down from the scaffold. And then Terry Taylor takes like a bump from, nearly off, nearly all the way down the scaffold and stuff like that. And this is not a good way to start the pay-per-view. Fortunately, it got better. Wait, worse. I mean, it got worse. We had JR and Shivani, who would not make it worse. They did their best trying to make this thing work. Talking about Ric Flair no longer being the NWA champion. And then talking about Wyndham and Luger fighting over the vacant World Championship, which is absolutely going to be in the main event. About that. So, we get Bischoff interviewing Arn and Paul Lee, and it was hyped for the cage match that's going to happen later. 2 cage matches, back to back. It's like Russo was booking this before he got into wrestling. And then they were killing time to remove the scaffold, which makes sense. That's why putting scaffolds on a pay-per-view was always dodgy. And then we get the Diamond Stud, who was walking along the razor's edge. Diamond Stud was Razor Ramon, just in case you guys didn't quite get that joke that I hit you over the head with. And he was managed by DDP, who faced Tom Zink with some women, just some random women they stole from the Saved by the Bell set, I guess, or something like that. DDP had some really over-tan woman that was almost as tan as the black outfit she had. Rip off Diamond Stud's pants. Yeah. Razor was in phenomenal shape at this point, but yeah, this was a shit gimmick. And then we got Tom Zink starting quick, then he gets knocked around a bit, and the match wasn't good. It was better than the other match, but then again, you could have squatted down, taken a shit in the ring, and it would have been better than the previous match. And it was belly to back suplex, pins, Zank 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay, cool. Let's move on to something better. Oh, wait, Oz. Remember Oz? Remember Kevin Nash getting some of the worst gimmicks in WCW history? And this was really shitty. He was Master Blaster, he was Oz, he was Vinny Vegas. And Vinny Vegas actually was probably the best of them, but that's like saying which of these shit sandwiches don't make you throw up right away. He gets a lavish castle projection and everything, and pyro and stuff like that. And I'm guessing that Oz was a Dusty Rhodes idea. If it was a Dusty Rhodes idea, then even the best can have some bad ideas. If it was a Jim Herd idea, I'm not surprised. So, it's Ron Simmons versus Oz with the Great Wizard, the Great Grand Wizard. Wait, that was something else. That was a Hogan-approved gimmick. And it was Kevin Sullivan in a weird mask. Unlike the weird mask that Oz had. This was such a bad, so bad. Oz was a terrible gimmick. Nash and Simmons tried. One guy was chanting boring and other people were. And to be fair, they were right. And it was a bunch of shoulder blocks, and eventually one kept Oz down 1, 2, 3. This is not the only time Kevin Sullivan would be involved in this pay-per-view. Don't know if you can tell so far, but I didn't really like this pay-per-view. We can't... Oh, God. The dark match, by the way, I guess I wrote this down because I checked the results, was JYD versus Black Bart in 1991 and went about 13 minutes. It went longer than a couple of these matches combined. Seriously. Some of these matches went maybe 6.5 minutes. Or a couple went like just over 6 minutes, and you could have combined two of them and it wouldn't have gone as long as JYD and Black Bart in 1991. We then get to WCW Top 10, going from 10 to 1, Johnny B. Bad, and then Ron Simmons, the Diamond Stud, Elegante, Arn, and then we get to the top 5, Eaton, Austin, Sting, Wyndham, and Luger. I'm going to be reviewing the Wrestle War 1992 show sometime after this, so look out for that. A much, much, much better show than this shitfest. But yeah, Luger and Wyndham, obviously the number 1, number 2 contenders because Flair, didn't want to be around Jim Herd. And evidently nobody else did because a lot of people were leaving at this point. We then get Richard Morton with Alexandra York of the York Foundation. I like the York Foundation. I like the theme. And I thought, Terry Reynolds, that's, who Alexandra York is. I thought was a pretty good manager. She had that giant, old school laptop computer, the handheld computer that you could hit people over the head with. And I actually had one of them when I was a kid. It was kind of cool. But yeah, this was it was two former tag partners. It was Rock and Roll Express, but it was, instead of Ricky Morton, it was Richard Morton versus Robert Gibson. The match was good. A little bit too much selling of the knee. Gibson did have knee surgery and was just coming back from it, so Morton was no doubt beating him down. The thing is after a while, the selling got a little bit much. And I'm not saying his knee wasn't really hurt or he wasn't good at or Morton didn't have good psychology. It was a little bit stretched out. When I think they could have done a little bit more stuff. Because they started with good fighting and they did some, good high flying and stuff like that. But since Morton was trying to be the heel, he was trying to be more grounded. And then Gibson would eventually come back with some moves. But it was a little bit slow. That being said, I did like the pace these guys had about 75% of the time. And then York distracts, takes the referee, who I believe was Bill Alfonso, before he got that stupid whistle. Bill Alfonso was one of the most annoying characters ever in wrestling. And I know he fit for ECW, but a lot of people fit in ECW that didn't fit anywhere else. I know there are some ECW fans here, and I got nothing against you guys. You guys are cool. Let's be honest. It was kind of an annoying character. And annoying past the point of really lending anything to the matches. So York distracts, and then Morton gets a computer, clocks Gibson in the head, despite the fact he pretty much had Gibson beat. He pretty much had him battling on one leg, so he probably could have just clipped him once. Like Sting versus Rude, I believe at the Clash in 91. They could have just done that finish, even though it hadn't happened yet. They could have done a clip thing, but it was a computer to the head. Man, that's smacking people with your technology. That's smacking your monitor to make sure it works. Not sure what the smacking thing's going on about. Morton gets a victory. 17 minutes, could have been 14, and I think they could have, they could have paced it up a little bit. That being said, good stuff. Dustin and the Young Pistols. Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong versus the Freebirds. Hayes, Garvin, and Badstreet, who was also Brad Armstrong. So 2 Armstrongs in this match. Thankfully, 2 more talented ones, unlike Brian Armstrong, Road Dogg, a.k.a. the Idiot. So it was, and by the way, the Freebirds, and I say Freebirds in this quote because Hayes was a Freebird. He was one of the founders. Along with Gordy Roberts, they were the Freebirds. Hayes, Garvin, and Badstreet were not the fucking Freebirds. And, nothing against Brad Armstrong, who was a good worker, but he was in a brightly colored, it was almost like he was a weird Riddler cosplayer. So anyway, they were the World Six-Man and U.S. Tag Team Champions. I totally forgot that WCW at this time had World Six-Man Championships. I know they had them, like, when Crockett had the company. I totally forgot that WCW carried them over. And at times it was okay, and then a lot of times the Freebirds just stalled a whole lot. This was about 17 and a half minute match, and it took nearly 14 minutes for the first elimination to happen. Now, nothing wrong with building up that stuff. You don't want to have elimination, happen so quickly and then do the number thing, but they could have done an elimination about halfway through, and I think might have been a little bit better, because Armstrong gets pinned by Hayes, and then they had the over-the-top rope rule thing, so while Smothers comes at Hayes back body drops him over the top rope. But oh no, the referee says, well, you threw him over the top rope, even though he kind of didn't. But he gets DQ'd. And it's double DDT that pins Smothers. So it's down to Dustin versus two guys, and then a Lariat instantly pins Garvin, and then a Bulldog, pins Badstreet about 2 minutes afterwards. So there you go. It's Dustin Rhodes gained the victory for his team. This match also could have been a little bit shorter. I mean, there are times where you can have long matches, but when you got the Freebirds not really being the Freebirds, not being very good, maybe you could have shortened it up. Yellow Dog, who was Brian Pillman in a mask. I want to explain this quickly. He lost a loser leaves town match with Elegante. It was him and Elegante against two people. Was it Arn Zabisco? It was Arn I thought it was Arn somebody. But Pillman lost, and he had to leave WCW. But then he came back as Yellow Dog, with the Yellow Dog with him. But the idea is if anybody could unmask and prove that it was Brian Pillman, he would be gone. And he took on Johnny B. Bad with Teddy Long. Johnny B. Bad as a heel. Okay, bit weird. The match was fine at points, but barely got going. I mean, it was about 6 minutes. There was, some decent action, but it barely got going after 6 minutes. And then Teddy Long interfered, tried to go after Pillman's mask, and then Pillman laid him out. But then, Johnny B. Bad knocked him down and everything, and we just got a big old schmoz there. Bischoff then is interviewing Missy Hyatt in Missy's locker room. But Missy's in the shower. They really liked objectifying Missy Hyatt, didn't they? It seems so. She was supposed to be part of this main event tag intergender cage match. About that, we'll see. Big Josh met the future Doink. Yes, Matt Bourne. As a lumberjack, and he's okay. He works all night. And he's in jobber matches all day. I mean, I was trying to come up with something a little bit better than my original line, but he took on Black Blood. Who is Black Blood? No, it's not a bad Taylor Swift knockoff song, and I like Taylor Swift. I'm saying a knockoff of Bad Blood. Billy Jack Haynes in a mask, an executioner mask. He had an axe. He tried to use said axe in this lumberjack match. The lumberjacks, by the way, were JYD, Dustin, Eaton, Slater, Murdoch, Morton, and a bunch of others. And yeah, this match was shit. Matt Bourne was not a bad worker. Billy Jack was near the end of his career by this point because he'd had injuries and stuff like that, and he was not the jacked up physical specimen that he was, but also it was a shit gimmick. It was two shit gimmicks having a lumberjack match, and nobody cared about this shit. And Billy Jack, I'm just going to say Billy Jack is Black Blood, so stupid. He gets his axe and tries to almost straight up murder Big Josh, kind of like when Berserker tried to stab Undertaker with the sword. And then inside Credo from Big Josh, 1, 2, 3. All that big schmuck. The crowd popped more for the lumberjacks brawl than anything else. Then one-man game with Kevin Sullivan, and they shout a lot while Bischoff interviews him. And then we get Elegante with a bunch of midgets coming to the ring. But don't worry, it gets better. And by better, I mean worse, because it's one-man gang versus Elegante. If you want to watch one of the worst matches in WCW pay-per-view history, watch this shit. Elegante, bless him, rest in peace. I know he's no longer with us. I know he tried his best. He was not cut out for the ring. One-man gang at this point had a little bit left, but he was more towards the end of his career. He would have a few, more years of like, prominent, position, and then would fade away because he'd been wrestling for quite a while. One of the worst things that I've seen. One of the worst things perpetrated on a mainstream pay-per-view. And I'm not including Heroes of Wrestling or UWF because I said mainstream pay-per-view. Let's hear it further. You know what? Not going to say what Herb Abrams said. So, it was terrible. This was worse than I remembered. And mind you, I've seen this pay-per-view and it was worse than I remembered. So, powder in the eyes. But One Man Gang gets it in the eye. Gross. And Elegante gets the victory. This match was about 6.5 minutes and felt like it lasted about 20. It was just fucking brutal. And then we get Nikita Koloff versus Sting in a Russian chain match, that is. They show footage of Sting celebrating with one of his kid bands, and then Nikita Koloff attacks him, and the kids are crying. That, kids, is why you don't meet your heroes. That's what you get for believing in people. Hi, I'm a nice person when it comes to children. Kids, don't be watching this. Don't let your parents let you watch this. Or don't have your parents let you watch this. Whatever the case. Sting was very over with kids. He was very over with me as a kid and as an adult. Shame what happened in WWE, but he did pretty damn well for himself in WCW and even in Impact, I would say. Okay, it was better than most of the card, but that's not saying much because Morton and Gibson was about the best match on this card. We got some choking action, and then later in June of 2007, we get more choking action, but I digress. Nikita wins literally by a hair, ironic considering he was bald. But Sting and him had touched all the corners, except one, and he goes for a Stinger Splash, and he almost hits it, but Nikita's shoulder hits first, and there we go. So Nikita gets a victory. They brawl afterwards. A chain right to Nikita's Russian sickle. And then Luger and Windham, we get a video package, the total package. We get to see the total package. Gross. And then commentary kills time while they set up the cage, which was like an 8-foot cage. It literally, actually, maybe even 7 feet, because Wyndham and Luger are pretty damn tall. Like, they're about 6'5", 6'6", or 6'4", 6'5", but anyway. And they're almost seen over the top of the cage, so it's just hilarious. So, the crowd's chanting, "We want Flair," because it's a steel cage match for the vacant NWA Championship, and "We Want Flair" might as well have been called "We Want Flair the Musical." This wasn't very good. Like, I'm not even going to bore you with the matches here, or with, the match details, because I'm going to wrap this up here, but it wasn't even a badly paced match. It was just bad timing, because nobody wanted to see either of these guys as champion. They wanted to see Flair as champion, but Flair had left, because Jim Herd was a fucking idiot. So eventually, Harley Race and Mr. Hughes show up for what Mr. Hughes was worth, not much, and Harley Race yells at Luger, "Now's the time," so he attacks Wyndham and hits the piledriver, Race's finisher, or one of his finishers, and gets victory. New champion, new NWA World Champion, and Luger would hold it all the way till Super Brawl 92, Electric Boogaloo, and which was Super Brawl 2, and would then leave after dropping it to Sting and go to the World Bodybuilding Federation. So this was not good. This wasn't good. This wasn't the main event, by the way. This is how much they believed in Lex Luger. They put him second from last. Because the main event was literally supposed to be Rick Steiner and Missy Hyatt versus Arn and Paulie in a intergender cage match. But the Maryland Athletic Commission would not allow intergender matches. So Missy Hyatt gets taken away by Slater and Murdoch. It's not the first time that Murdoch has taken advantage of somebody, I'm sure. But usually it's, usually let's just say Dick Murdoch could have put 2 more Ks at the end of his name. And that would have described his lifestyle as good as he was in the ring. It's a 2-minute cage match, and Paulie gets pinned after a Steiner line. That's it. That's right there. I'm not even going to rip up the notes. I'm just going to crumble the note, because that's basically what this thing deserves. Yeah, it wasn't a very good show, and I think you could probably tell I didn't really like it. Anyway, agree, disagree, what I said. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.